Hey rich girls, Kirby here. It's 2024 and you know what that means. It's a presidential election year. Historically, election years wreak havoc on the stock market. Think volatile, wild price swings, tons of media coverage, and insane speculations as to how the world will implode if either candidate wins over the other. But here's the thing. We go through this same exact cycle every 4 years. And every 4 years, we seem to have amnesia that, in fact, the world did not end after the last election. We are going to dissect what a presidential election year will mean for your finances and give you some practical steps so that you don't f yourself over financially. This is Rich Girl's Guide, where we demystify the world of personal finance to help you create a financially successful and fulfilling life. I'm your host, Kirby Delicano, and I worked in wealth management for over 6 years before leaving the office to focus on my business and my family. Before we get into the meat of this episode, I want to put out a disclaimer that I am not going to be talking about my personal political leanings today. I'm currently trying to convince my husband to start a different podcast with me where we lightly debate politics while learning how the government actually works. We both have different political leanings, so I think it would actually be super entertaining. But that is not what today's episode is about. I believe that when it comes to personal finance, your political leanings do not matter. We're not talking about taxation policies. We are not discussing regulatory changes or government spending. We are talking about how the general public, you and I, make personal financial decisions based on the media and the fear-mongering that surrounds presidential election years. And it's honestly quite alarming. When researching for this episode, I stumbled upon this article listed on JP Morgan called Investing in an Election Year that pulls studies from the Pew Research Center. I will link the article in the description below. I highly recommend reading the whole thing, and I wanted to read you an excerpt. Exhibit 1 shows a survey from the Pew Research Center asking Americans how they feel about economic conditions. The results show that Republicans often feel better about the economy under a Republican president, while similarly, Democrats often feel better about the economy under a Democratic president. Investors often make portfolio decisions based on their economic outlook. Yet, average annual returns on the S&P 500 during the Obama administration of 16.3% and during the Trump administration of 16% were almost identical and higher than the average return over the last 30 years of 10.1%. It is likely the macro conditions like ultra-low interest rates enjoyed during both Obama and Trump administrations were a more influential driver of above-average returns during those periods, rather than the policy prescriptions each president espoused. Investors who allowed their political opinions to overrule their investing discipline may have missed out on above-average returns during political administrations they did not like. Let me read that last sentence again, just to drive home the point. Investors who allowed their political opinions to overrule their investing discipline may have missed out on above-average returns during political administrations they didn't like. This succinctly sums up my thoughts exactly. Essentially, you can shoot yourself in the foot by changing around your portfolio and your investments based solely on who you think will do a good job in office. Here's my quote-unquote hot take. The actual election has nothing to do with your portfolio and how the stock market performs, at least in the short term during an election year. Rather, it is the actions of investors, aka the mass sell-off of stock in anticipation of the election, that makes the market so volatile in these election years. Sure, in the following years, the new administration will affect change that will have market effects. But again, there are so many other factors that will also affect the market that no one can accurately assign a percentage to exactly how much a particular president or administration has moved the market. It's just not possible. Inflation, unemployment, GDP, world news, these are all going to affect the market. And just blanketly blaming a bad return on whoever happens to be in office at the time is asinine. Obviously, this is just my opinion, so take all of this with a grain of salt. Real quick while I have you, if you are enjoying this episode, please consider giving the show a rate and review wherever you are listening right now. Thank you so much. Here's my number one tip during election season. If you feel yourself getting worked up emotionally and you feel that emotion may spill over into making financial decisions, turn off the TV, pause your podcast, put down the iPad, and go for a walk outside. Distance yourself from the crazy media discussions and ground yourself in reality. Because let's face it, how much money you put away for retirement and your personal investment decisions are going to make a much bigger impact on your portfolio than whoever is sitting in office. Making investment changes during an election year typically boils down to one thing: trying to time the market. The definition of market timing is the act of moving investment money in or out of the financial market based on predictive methods. Essentially, if you think the market is going to go down next week, but then go up the following week, you might as well sell today while the market is high and then buy next week while the market is low. In theory, this works. Buy low, sell high. In reality, this is extremely difficult to accomplish, and 9 times out of 10, it will work against you. Moral of the story, do not sell all of your stock and leave it in cash. There may be a handful of lucky individuals that cash out at the peak of the market, reinvest at the bottom, and then dub themselves financial gurus. Do not fall for this line of thinking. This is 100% dumb luck. Because, say it with me, you can't time the market. If someone had a crystal ball and could accurately predict the future, I think we would have probably seen it on TikTok by now. If you are not yet 100% sold that market timing is unattainable, listen to this report released by Fidelity Investments. They conducted an analysis on the S&P 500 index, and essentially they said, hey, what if an investor had put $10,000 into the S&P 500 on January 1st, 1980, and let it ride all the way through December 31st, 2022? Assuming the investor did not touch that money, they did not move around investments, they did not put another penny into an account, and they reinvested their dividends, that investor would have yielded about $1.1 million. But Fidelity took it a step further. They said, what if that investor had tried to time the market? And what if they missed out on the best 5 days in the market? Well, their account value dropped from over $1 million to $671,000. What if they missed the best 10 days? Their account value now dropped to under $500,000. What if they missed the best 30 days? Well, now you have less than $200,000, almost an 80% drop in value from being invested all of the days just by missing the top 30 days over a 42-year time period. And worst of all, if you miss the best performing 50 days of the market over that time period, less than 2 full months, your account value dropped to only $76,000. Now, to be fair, if you had pulled out of the stock market for a 1 month or a 2 month time period over those 42 years, it would be highly unlikely that every single day during that time period would result in the best market day, dropping your account value so drastically. Additionally, if you were out of the market on those best days, you more than likely missed some of the low days as well, which in my opinion skews this data to look better than it really is. Remember, this report has been put out by Fidelity Investments, a financial institution that makes money by people investing in the market. Let's instead take a look at a more recent period of time that might hit a bit closer to home. March of 2020. If you had decided to invest $10,000 into the S&P 500 on January 1st, 2020, by March 23rd, you would have only $6,895, a 31% drop in the market value in just under 3 months. Now, a lot of investors got spooked during this time. I was in the office taking those phone calls. Our phone was ringing off the hook because everyone and their mother wanted to quote unquote stop the bleeding and cut their losses before it got worse. Had the investor taken out their money from the market on March 23rd, they would have sealed their fate and actually taken a 31% hit. If, on the other hand, they had kept their money in the market and did not touch it for the remainder of the year, they would have ended 2020 with a little over $11,600, a total return of 11.6%, which is just slightly higher than the average annual S&P 500 return. Unfortunately for a lot of folks, because of the uncertainties surrounding COVID, the fear they had surrounding the market, and the fact that it was an election year, many people missed out on these returns and instead cemented their loss by pulling out of the market in March and either not returning until 2021 or waiting until it was too late in 2020. So with all that being said, this year is going to be interesting to say the very least. I believe we have the oldest candidates ever running against each other. Please check me if I'm wrong on that. We have a very divisive war going on in the world that does not seem to have an end in sight. Inflation is still high in the US, and I don't know about you, but personally, I know a lot of people that are currently out of work and looking for a job. So the media is gonna have a field day this year, and if I can just reiterate it one more time, do not let outside stressors dictate your emotional state, and do not let your emotional state impact your investment decisions. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I would love to know your thoughts. Feel free to drop a comment on YouTube. Also, if you have any money-related questions you would like me to answer on a future episode, you can ask me a question anonymously at the link in my description. I'm gearing up to do a Q&A episode soon, and this one does not have a specific theme, so it can be anything money, investment, saving, budgeting, literally anything money-related. I will see you on Thursday with another video, and next Monday will be another full episode. Later, rich girls.